Rain poured over the city like a silver curtain, washing away the neon reflections from tall glass towers. Inside, the Rusty Clover, a small downtown bar tucked between skyscrapers, Maya Lewis wiped the counter for the third time that hour. It was nearly midnight, and her body screamed for rest. But she couldn't stop. Not when rent was due in 3 days, and her 6-year-old son, Caleb, needed new shoes for school. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the muffled chatter of half-drunk customers filled the air. The smell of whiskey and fried food clung to her apron. She checked the clock. 15 more minutes until closing. Then, the door swung open, hitting the wall with a loud thud. Every head turned. A tall man stumbled inside, soaked, disheveled, and clearly drunk. His dark hair clung to his forehead, his shirt was half untucked, and his expensive shoes splashed through puddles on the wooden floor. Maya recognized him instantly. Ethan Cross, the billionaire CEO of Cross Industries. The man whose company owned half the city, and probably the very building this bar was in. She had seen his photo in newspapers, always surrounded by bodyguards and investors. But now, he looked broken. He walked straight to the bar and slapped his credit card on the counter. "Whiskey," he said hoarsely. "Top shelf. Leave the bottle." Maya blinked. "Sir, with all due respect, you look like you've already had a few." He lifted his head slowly, his gray eyes sharp despite the alcohol. "Do you know who I am?" "I do," she said softly, "and that's why I'm saying no." The room went quiet. The bartender saying no to a billionaire was not something people saw every day. A few men in the corner laughed nervously. Ethan's jaw tightened, his pride stung. "Then pour it," he snapped. "That's an order." Maya stood her ground. "You can order whiskey anywhere, Mr. Cross. But here, I care if someone walks out alive." His lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Something flickered in his eyes, confusion, then pain. He sank onto the bar stool, exhaling heavily. "You're brave," he muttered. "Or stupid." "Probably both," she said, grabbing a glass of water instead. "Drink this." On the house. He looked at her, then the glass. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with a small sigh, he took it and drank. As he stared into the half-empty glass, Maya saw his reflection, not the billionaire everyone admired, but a man weighed down by something invisible. He ran a hand through his wet hair and whispered almost to himself, "Everything I built, gone. One decision, and they're ready to eat me alive." She didn't ask questions. She'd learned that sometimes, people didn't need answers, just someone who would listen without judgment. A few minutes later, the door opened again. 3 men entered, loud, laughing, reeking of alcohol and trouble. They noticed Ethan immediately. "Hey, isn't that Ethan Cross?" One said too loudly. "What's a billionaire doing in a dump like this?" Another grinned. "Probably hiding from his board of directors. Heard his company's in trouble." Maya's stomach tightened. The way they were looking at him wasn't admiration, it was opportunity. She'd seen that look before. Men like them smelled weakness. She leaned toward Ethan. "Mr. Cross, your driver's outside," she whispered quickly. He frowned. "Driver, I came alone." "Not anymore," she said under her breath. "Come with me, please." The men were getting closer now, pretending to order drinks while pulling out their phones. One of them whispered, a video of him drunk would sell for thousands. Maya's heart raced. She made a decision. "Sir," she said more firmly, "you need to come now." He blinked, disoriented. "What?" Before he could resist, she looped his arm around her shoulders and guided him toward the back door. "Trust me," she murmured. The cold rain hit them like ice as they stepped into the alley. Ethan stumbled, nearly losing his balance. Maya gritted her teeth and helped him to her old beat-up car parked nearby. "Where are we going?" he mumbled, his voice slurred with exhaustion. "Home," she said simply. "Yours, I hope." He muttered an address, the most expensive part of town. Of course. The drive was tense. Streetlights blurred through the rain, casting streaks of gold across his pale face. He stared out the window, mumbling to himself. Words like betrayal, contracts, trust. She didn't understand, but she didn't interrupt. When they reached his building, she gasped softly. The marble facade gleamed even in the storm. Security guards rushed over immediately. "Mr. Cross." One said, shocked. What happened? Maya stepped out first. He's fine. Just needs rest. The guards eyed her suspiciously. One asked sharply, who are you? Just someone who didn't want a bad night to turn worse, she replied, meeting his gaze. They helped Ethan out of the car. He looked half-conscious, mumbling something that sounded like, thank you. As they carried him inside, one guard smirked. Don't get your hopes up, lady. Men like him forget faces like yours by morning. Maya said nothing. She just turned, walked back to her car, and drove home through the rain. When she reached her small apartment, the world felt quieter. Caleb was asleep, clutching his toy dinosaur. She kissed his forehead and sat beside him, finally letting the night sink in. Her clothes were soaked, her shoes ruined, and her shift had gone unpaid. But she smiled faintly, because somewhere in a penthouse far above the city, a man who had everything had almost lost himself, and she, a woman with almost nothing, had saved him. She turned off the light, unaware that her act of kindness had just changed both their lives forever. Maya woke before dawn, as she always did. The faint gray light seeped through her thin curtains, touching the sleeping face of her little boy, Caleb. For a moment she simply watched him breathe, his lashes fluttering with a dream she wished she could protect forever. Then the alarm buzzed. Life never paused for single mothers. By 6:30, she had packed Caleb's lunch, braided his hair mussed curls, and buttoned her faded uniform. He smiled sleepily over his cereal. Mom, will you be home early today? Maybe. She lied gently. If the cafe isn't too busy. When she dropped him at school, the November air bit through her jacket. She tightened the scarf around her neck, unaware that somewhere uptown, the man she'd rescued was waking in a bed the size of her whole apartment. Ethan's morning. Ethan Cross opened his eyes to a headache that felt like thunder. His assistant, Tom, stood at the foot of the bed, phone in hand and worry written all over his face. Good morning, sir. You, were brought home last night. By who? Ethan asked groggily. Tom hesitated. A woman. The bartender, I think. Security said she refused a tip and left before they could ask her name. Ethan rubbed his temples. Flashes came back. The rain, the bar, a soft voice telling him, please, trust me. He remembered the warmth of her shoulder against his when he could barely stand. He sat up suddenly. Find her. Tom blinked. Find her. Yes. Today. At the cafe. Meanwhile, Maya was behind the counter of Harper's Cafe, pouring coffee and forcing a smile for the morning rush. Her eyes felt heavy, but she couldn't stop thinking about the man she'd helped. She hoped he'd woken safely. And then she scolded herself. Billionaires didn't think about people like her. At 8:15 a.m., the bell above the cafe door chimed. She turned automatically with her practiced smile. It froze halfway. Ethan Cross stood there, clean-shaven, sharp-suited, looking every bit the magazine cover man again. Conversations around the cafe died instantly. Every customer recognized him. Maya felt the air grow thick with curiosity. He walked straight toward her. Maya Lewis, he said quietly, as if confirming she was real. Her mouth went dry. You, remember me? I remember everything. His voice was soft but certain. You stopped me from making a fool of myself, or worse. I owe you more than I can say. Maya's cheeks flushed. You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same. Not anyone, he replied. I've been surrounded by people my entire life, but last night, the only person who helped me was a stranger who had nothing to gain. He set a small envelope on the counter. Please, take this. She frowned. If it's money, it's not. He gave a faint smile. Just open it when you have time. Then, before she could answer, he ordered a black coffee and sat quietly at a corner table. For 10 long minutes he watched the rain outside while she stole glances, her heart drumming in disbelief. When he finished his drink, he stood, nodded politely, and left, just like that. The cafe buzzed with whispers the moment he was gone. The envelope. During her break, Maya finally opened the envelope. Inside was a cream-colored letter stamped with the Cross Industries emblem. Her breath caught as she read. Greater than, Dear Ms. Lewis, I am in need of a new personal assistant. Someone honest, level-headed, and unafraid to tell me when I'm wrong. You fit that description better than anyone I've met. If you are willing, the position is yours. Ethan Cross. Her hands trembled. A personal assistant. For a billionaire. It felt absurd. She worked in a cafe, lived in a 2-room apartment, and didn't even own a laptop. Still, a tiny spark of hope flickered. That evening, when she told Caleb she might be starting a new job, his eyes lit up. Will it mean you can be home more, Mommy? I don't know, baby, she said honestly. But maybe it'll mean we can finally fix the heater. A new world. The next week, Maya found herself standing in the marble lobby of Cross Industries, feeling completely out of place among polished shoes and glass elevators. She almost turned around, but the receptionist greeted her kindly and led her upstairs. Ethan was waiting in his office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the same city she'd watched from bus stops all her life. Maya, he said with genuine warmth, I'm glad you came. I'm not sure I'm the right person, she admitted. I don't have corporate experience. I just make good coffee. He smiled. Then you already know what half my board doesn't, how to stay human. Over the following weeks, she learned quickly. She managed his calendar, answered calls, even reminded him to eat lunch. He discovered she had a quiet intelligence, a calm under pressure that steadied him in a way no assistant ever had. Sometimes he'd stop by her desk just to ask, how's Caleb doing? And each time he said her son's name, it sounded softer, almost personal. The moment that changed everything. One evening, after most of the staff had gone, Ethan lingered by her desk. The skyline burned gold with sunset behind him. Maya, he said, voice lower than usual, do you ever think about that night? She glanced up. Every time it rains. He nodded slowly. So do I. He looked down at his hands. That night, I was seconds away from destroying everything I'd built. The board was ready to force me out, the media waiting to crucify me. You didn't just pull me out of that bar. You reminded me that I'm still a person. She hesitated. Everyone deserves a second chance, Mr. Cross. Ethan, he corrected softly. You've earned the right to call me Ethan. A quiet laugh escaped her. All right, Ethan. Their eyes met, an unspoken current passing between them. He looked at her not as an employee, not as a savior, but as someone who had seen the man behind the headlines. A promise remembered. Winter came, and with it, long nights at the office. One snowy evening, Maya was leaving when Ethan stopped her by the elevator. He held out a small box. For Caleb, he said. You mentioned he wanted to learn piano. There's a small keyboard inside. Her throat tightened. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said simply. Because you didn't have to help me that night either, and you still did. She blinked back tears. Thank you. He smiled faintly. You once told me people forget faces like yours by morning. I never did. As the elevator doors closed, Maya realized something extraordinary. Kindness had a strange way of circling back, of finding you again even when you least expected it. And somewhere between late-night deadlines and early morning coffee runs, two lonely hearts began to heal, one act of courage binding them in ways neither had planned. He never pretended to forget her. He never could.